What's up everyone, and welcome back to HateWatchers. Today we're going over the 8th episode of The Last of Us, entitled When We Are in Need. Let's jump right into the breakdown. Spoilers ahead. We open up in a little mountain town where some religious folk are praying for some of that global warming. This girl's tears interrupt the minister's preachings, and he tells her to shut her pie hole. Their leader David and his Bible buddy James talk about their people's need of food, and they plan to go out in search of a McDonald's later. Ellie lays out a treat in front of Joel's nose to try and get him to do tricks, but he is dead set on breaking the record for the world's longest grumpy nap. Ellie then sets out in search of some food, and she comes across Bambi's mom and coldly eliminates her. David and James' prayers aren't answered as they find no Mickey D's, but they do come across a deer and are going to steal it when Ellie gets the jump on them. Ellie and David discuss trading half of the deer for some booze and some dope that she hopes will entice Joel away from his incessant napping.
Bring back 2 bottles and a syringe.
David ends up telling Ellie his entire life story by the campfire. We learn that Joel killed the dad of the girl crying earlier in the episode, and things get tense as Ellie takes her share of the exchange and makes her escape. She returns to Joel and says, "Let's see you try and sleep through this, you old fuck," and she starts stabbing at his wound. Back with the Bible thumpers, David understands that sometimes you must lie to people to keep their spirits high, and he tells them that they found the Holy McDonald's and they brought back a McVenison meal. He vows to set out after Ellie in the morning, and the girl says,
"No, we go in, we kill, no more talk, we kill."
And then David smacks her silly and says, "I'm your daddy now." Ellie is still trying to get Joel to wake up, but she gets bored and heads outside where she senses a disturbance in the force. Around the corner, James says the wrong thing about God, and David looks at him. Oh my god, so scary. Ellie rides out to draw them away from Joel, and her horse gets shot down 11 feet away. James is ready to rearrange Ellie's face, but David stops them and captures her alive. The group goes door to door just looking for some toilet paper, when suddenly Joel knifes one of them in the neck. But then Joel realizes this is all overrated and he goes back to napping. Ellie's into naps now too after spending so much time with an old man. David wants Ellie to join them, but she's a little resistant given that they just captured and imprisoned her. Back in the neighborhood, Joel realizes that more of these a-holes are coming to screw with his naps, so he picks apart their little group one by one. Joel interrogates one of them for the location of their town and then grants their wishes, sending them to meet God. Ellie realizes that these people are cannibals and that she's next on the menu. And when confronted, David owns up to this as something he had to do as these people's glorious supreme leader. And it turns out David's real religion is the Church of Cordyceps. Ellie pretends to be listening very intently, but then breaks his finger. They prepare to butcher her when she tells David that she's infected him, and he'll soon be on his way to meet his Cordyceps god. They hesitate, and Ellie does some butchering of her own and escapes. Then Ellie turns up the heat for the most intense round of hide and seek of her life. She knifes David but gets pinned down. When all hope is seemingly lost, she finds a cleaver with which to send David to have an interesting conversation with God. Joel says, "Surprise!" to Ellie, and she doesn't take it too well. They waddle off toward the water for a quick dip, and the episode comes to an end. Well, we've reached that point in the video where we have to decide if this episode was a great watch or a hate watch, and we're giving this one the great watch designation. Nothing in this episode really blew us away, but it was solid all around. Ellie seems like she's become much more capable of looking after her own survival now. She still struggles with things, but she's at least been able to keep Joel alive and understands what she needs to do toward that end. I guess pressure makes diamonds and all that, and Ellie's rising to the occasion. Now, it felt like the actress was straining to deliver the lines that Game Ellie delivered so confidently when she first meets David and James, but it could have been a style choice to make it obvious in the show that she's out of her depth. Also, we enjoyed seeing how Joel has come full circle with Ellie, and in a moment of emotional distress, his treatment of her was no different than how he would have treated his own daughter. Yes, Ellie and Joel's relationship hasn't quite been the endearing tale that we got from the game, but seeing Ellie and Joel's eyes go from a complete burden to an annoyance, and all the way to essentially an adoptive daughter is satisfying. And it's a development that needed to happen before the finale next week. It was cool to see yet another voice actor from the game, this time Joel's voice actor, Troy Baker, getting to play a part in the show. He did a phenomenal job bringing Joel to life in the games and making this story worth bringing to TV, so it's nice to see at least a nod to his work in the show. If we have to nitpick about something, we don't think that David was super convincing as this big bad evil cult leader. Outside of making us assume that his religious teachings have tricked everyone into following him blindly, the show really doesn't do anything to establish a reason for him being in charge of these people and for having seemingly complete control over them. The character lacks that edge or something that keeps everyone else in this village from dethroning him. And there has to be a solid reason that they don't unseat him when he's smacking around little girls and openly filling his plate with 10 times as much food as everyone else. Sure, this is a cult, and people in cults often exhibit inexplicable behaviors that they otherwise never would. But at least show us how he captured these people in his little cult, without seeing him pull off some miracle in the past for these people, or seeing him cruelly beating down dissenters. It leaves the audience questioning why this guy is in charge. And it's similar to when people were wondering why on earth this woman was in charge of that group back in Kansas City. The creators must think that we are just going to assume it makes sense and buy in without realizing we need at least a little something as to why these people are being followed. Nonetheless, it was an interesting character study of someone who picked up religion seemingly just to use it to take advantage of others. And another minor nitpick is that Ellie, the same girl who 3 months ago thought she could rub her blood on an infected wound and cure someone, is now accurately diagnosing someone's medical needs, correctly measuring and administering antibiotics, and taking hostages. Sure, some of it can be explained as her having picked it up from Joel along the way, but the change is a bit too drastic to be believable. The problem more so lies with the previously mentioned scene from episode 5, but her actions in this one serve as an example of how one ill-conceived scene earlier in the season can undermine a character further down the road. As for comparing this side by side with the game, a lot of the scenes and conversations and dialogue here were identical to that of the game, so the show continues to do a good job in that regard. But of course, the whole run-in with zombies that Ellie and David have was cut out of it, because modern zombie shows forget that there are zombies out there. Now, our last video for this show seems to have pissed off the YouTube algorithm, because we had the audacity to talk about the characters featured in that episode who are of a certain age group and a certain sexual orientation. And YouTube can get tripped up if it comes across those kinds of buzzwords. The comments were automatically turned off 3 or 4 times, and the video got about 1/3 of the views our Last of Us videos typically get. So in case you missed that one, it's linked in the description down below. But what were your thoughts on episode 8? Was it good, or does it just seem good when we compare it to last week's steaming pile of crap? Let us know in the comments. Also, if you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed our video, and click the subscribe button to stay tuned to the channel for next week's review video, the complete season review for The Last of Us, and a compilation of the funniest clips from the first season. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one.